So good day, everyone. There's go again, go again. There, there we are. There we are. A man on his toys, as you can
That's
tell,
right.
Mr.
And no
John
copyright
Corey's.
issues.
Yeah, Mr. John Corey's finding all these new features on his Zoom and his display boards. So a wee bit of music intro. So listen, welcome everyone to our monthly broadcast, and absolutely delighted to have today Mr. Rory OMara. Hello, Rory. How are you?
Hello, David. I'm very well, thank you. Hello, John.
Good day. Good day. Welcome, everybody.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic, everyone. So we'll get straight into it for our normal fast moving that normally is. So
Well, you were just traveling, what, 500 miles an hour?
I got on a flight this morning in Belfast, which was delayed maybe 45 minutes, and then delayed again on the runway in Luton, and then the trains were delayed, and et cetera, et cetera. So I managed
But the plane flew fast, right? So
the plane flew fast, yes, but it doesn't fly fast when it's sitting on the runway, unfortunately. That's the problem. It wasn't the part in the air was the issue. But here we are. Thankfully, the co-working space world has come to my rescue today. So, listen, for those that don't know me, my name's David Johnson. I'm the CEO of Leo Crowdfunding. We're an equity property crowdfunding platform, and my resident co-host is Mr. John Corey. Over to you for an intro.
good day. John Corey, Property Fortress. As David said, co-host, we've been doing this for we're in the third year, I think now, right?
I believe we are. You're correct.
But I look just as good as I did 3 years ago, right? So that's, at least that didn't change.
True. And there was no music on the intros 3 years ago.
Well, we are trying to raise our game slowly.
Yeah, we're definitely getting there. So today we're doing a quick market update. We'll have our special topic, special guest with Rory, who you'll hear from. And then there's a wee bit of Corey's Corner, a bit of platform news, and obviously how you can get in touch if you so wish. So we always like to start with just something interesting from the news. This is usually sprung on John. He doesn't usually have any pre-knowledge of the slide, so it's a good way of testing his overall knowledge of the market. These, of course, are just views of John and I. We're not giving financial advice or legal advice, of course. But the headline, The Guardian, millions of young adults living in poor quality housing, according to UK study. So 2.6 million people aged 18 to 34 are living in damp, drafty, cramped living conditions, certainly substandard. I find that quite a shocking figure. I knew there would be some, but 2.6 million is a lot of people. So any observations, John, or knowledge of damp and cramped, drafty conditions?
So I'm slightly less shocked because, funny enough, as maybe Rory was talking about podcasts, I was listening to a podcast earlier today, and they were discussing a paper that the two people speaking had worked on along with Cambridge University, and they did quote some of these same numbers. So I guess there's some reality out there, or everybody's quoting the wrong source. And it does seem extremely shocking, particularly that photo, which the people in the podcast can't see, but the people watching on the screen could. And how much this is like the worst of the worst, I don't know. But 2.6 million is a lot of people. It is skewed towards the younger demographic, maybe because they have less money to spend, maybe because they're less discerning, or they don't know their rights, or some other reason. It also heavily includes the public sector housing. It's not private landlords exclusively. It seems to be across the whole range of tenancies and types of properties. And what it does speak to also is the UK has the worst quality housing stock in all of the EU when it comes to energy efficiency and things like that. So the dampness, the mold, the other things are all associated with poor quality housing stock from a point of view of drafts and moisture and airflow and condensation. So we got a big problem.
Why is that? Why is the housing stock so bad? Because it's older housing, I'm guessing, as opposed to other parts of Europe, or what would the reason be?
Some of that is age, and it is tied to how much got blown up in the wars. If you're in certain countries, a lot of it got wiped out. Britain, though, did lose 40% of its housing stock during World War II, from what I understand. There's an element of, there's quite a bit of a building during the Victorian period. Energy was somewhat inexpensive. You might have had one fire, so to speak, fireplace in a room. You didn't have central heating. The mold and the damp issues, well, those go away if you have the air blowing through all the time. So it is a legacy of history, but at the same time, do we need to get the bulldozers and just knock them all down?
Go again, yeah. So Rory, in terms of the current market, soaring rents, mortgage, the payments up, etc. I mean, what do you have you ever come across this space much, or some of your clients ever maybe refurbing this type of stock?
Yes, so I'm not surprised at the data. I think there's just been massive underinvestment, say from the state, for example. But you're right, John, this isn't just private landlords. And it would be really interesting to understand the 2.6 million people, how many homes is that? And what's the split between private landlords and state stock, whether it's housing associations, because I think most of it is held within housing associations, and there are some councils. And if they're under budgeted, then yeah, I think you'd see this. But most of the landlords, or well, nearly all of the landlords that I work with, so are investors / developers, they'd be buying property like this, probably using a bridging loan, and they'd be undertaking a refurb. Funny enough, we're just doing one. I was on site today. The refurb's 100K on a 3-bed, or was a 2-bed detached house. A person who lived in it had mental health issues. 3 foot deep of personal possessions, you name it. And we'll turn that around, and that will be ready probably in about 3 months' time. But yeah, there's lots of it like this, but you have to find the cash to do the work. And I don't think the local authority / state have the money. Then you're going to need to find a private landlord who's prepared to make the investment. And don't get me started on EPCs and all those things.
That's
does not meet those standards.
No, that's an interesting angle on that, because that's a whole different sort of factor. And even taking a step back in terms of society before we move on to the next slide here, and definitely a topic for another day, but I'll just throw it in there to see John's eyebrows raised slightly. The whole concept, and I'm very much in for obviously helping people that you can help, and any good nation should want to help other nations that are going through difficulty. So all on for that. But I do find ironic sometimes that we send so many hundreds of millions, if not billions, around the world to other societies and other nations, and yet within our own nation, people who belong to our nation, 2.6 million were living in this type of accommodation, or the accommodation that you just described, Rory. I'm like, there's something just not quite right in terms of how this is ignored, but we send billions around the world. But that's a soapbox one to be debate for another day.
Yeah, and I would say that it's not ignored, but as Rory highlighted, it's going to take a massive amount of money to correct the backlog. So,
yeah, true. Okay, a couple of just quick platform updates before we move on to Rory and our topic for today. First of all, delighted to introduce our new investor manager, Sophie Lowther, has joined the team, and we're going to hear from Sophie next month, along with a few new members of Leo Crowdfunding. Sophie has a master's in law, bachelor's of law. She's been a conveyance secretary, alternative investment coordinator, sort of specializing in customer liaison management skills. So Sophie has joined to really handle the investor management, which is an area that we know we need to keep improving on, and make sure we're on top of that. So look forward to introducing Sophie next month.
Very good. Is that a pre-announcement?
Yes, pre, because we have another slide later on as well. Okay. I was in London last Wednesday, and last Monday, and spoke
a week ago Monday, right?
Week ago Monday, correct. And I spoke at the Developers Club. This is Shiro and Tex have put together nearly 100 developers now in their affiliate group, but they have a board group, which is 20 sort of young aspiring developers, but with already a solid track record. So I was able to present about equity crowdfunding, about the whole area of alternative finance regulation, and then out for a nice meal afterwards. So this was certainly nice, John. It's always nice to be in that room where you've got developers who, many of them are wanting to understand compliance, wanting to understand regulation, and many of them still don't know, aren't up to speed with what's going on in the world of compliance.
So you said this is a young, aspiring group. Well, how did you get an invite?
Oh, he's got the music. I was going for the drums there, but you've got the actual music. Well, I think I still won the prize for looking the youngest in the room, but that's another
Yeah,
matter altogether.
we'll have that vote later.
So yeah, I was glad to be there, and the younger generation give you enthusiasm, John, inspire you. So
Okay. Well,
sends you away good.
Let me address the comment you made, which is there is a gap sometimes between what people understand or what they've been taught from certain trainers and what the regulations require. And we'll get into that, I think, a little later.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I am obviously in London now. We've got a networking event tonight over in Stratford with AJ and the team, our Property Investor Network event. And then Friday, Saturday, I am at the Property Investor Show. So if any of you attendees are at the Property Investor Show, come and see us. I think it's stand 28. The Integritas, one of our fundraisers, has a stand, and I'm going to be co-located with that along with Sophie, and then
Do you
doing
know the stand number?
28.
28. Okay.
28, yeah. And I'm doing a talk then on Saturday. So I'm doing a slot, John, on crowdfunding on Saturday, which I wouldn't think there's been too many crowdfunding equity presentations to the Property Investor Show. So looking forward to that. And yeah, so tonight over in Stratford, still time to get your Eventbrite ticket. Free event over with AJ and the team in Stratford. Really good sort of short presentations on diversification, and the main part of the evening is just networking. So there's the link, do a quick screen grab, take an image, and look forward to seeing you this evening if you can make it over at Stratford. And the next month is fine. Here we are. Okay, so delighted to have with us Mr. Rory OMara from Closed Bridging Finance. So Rory, I'll sort of nudge through these. You can give me a prompt, but really glad to have you on. And just first of all, talk a bit about yourself and your background, and then we'll move into some of the things we're going to cover today.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, David and John. So before we start, guys, look, usual disclaimer, look, this presentation is not investment advice. If you need that, seek it from a professional advisor, your accountant, solicitor, IFA. And finally, whether it's me or anybody you hear talk, whether it's on a podcast or a live, do your own independent verification of the facts and the data. Ask lots of questions and check and double check. We can move on. Next slide, thanks. So just whiz through this. So yeah, quick overview. For those of you who have not met me before, folks, very simply, I've been around a while. I've been in business 35 plus years now. Originally, I started working for a company called NCR. So if you've ever taken money out of a cash machine, my first job in the late 80s when I worked for NCR, for some you'll go, I have no idea what he's talking about, but I sold fax paper, telex paper, and floppy disks. And some will go, I have no idea. You are incredible.
John predated those, Rory. Just for
well, I know what NCR is, yeah. So it's like, but Rory and I are probably almost the same age if he's got 35 years of business experience.
Yeah, definitely, John. So, but what I did, folks, then I moved to work in the city selling financial information, financial data, working with fund management houses. And pretty much everything I've done has always been based around trying to be a pioneer, try and do something new. I get bored really easily. And then we set up an IT consulting business based around a help desk and service desk. And I sold that to my business partner, who gave me a little bit of money. And that's when I started lending my money for property deals, which back in the day, didn't really understand, but we've learned a hell of a lot. So our business is really simple. We lend our own funds and we also broker, because there'll be projects that we just won't fund for one reason or another. We can get better deals. And then we are funding, it's based around refurbs, development, bridging, and everything to do with buy to let. And also we'll look at joint venture funding as well. But the key thing is we look for problems that we can solve and we can understand the way to help the client. You overcome the problem, then maybe we might be able to collaborate, or if not, we'll tell you. And that's the key thing. Next slide, please, David.
Just on that was one of the things that prompted me to invite you on, Rory. We were obviously having just a general conversation a few months ago about property, and you just commented about a number of challenges that had arisen in your past in business, but also with clients, and you clearly had a real focus on solving problems, not necessarily just identifying what the problems are, but actually solving them. And I definitely want to get into a bit of that with you as we go through this.
Yeah, and again, if you've worked with me, funny enough, in the early days, we'd have a lot of clients who'd call us and go, look, we don't really understand finance. And we'd sort of spend maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes on the phone. Actually, the reality is we went, look, this doesn't work. So we've done probably 400 plus now one-to-one strategy reviews. So that's where clients come and spend 4 hours with me in Winchester. I am very blunt and direct. I tell it as it is. And if I think the projects you're working on aren't viable, I will tell you. I want to save you from yourself because I don't like to see people lose money. And so that's a big part of what we do. And that's how we sort of engage with clients. But I'm not aligned to any training organization or any particular entity, which is important.
Okay.
Next slide, please, David.
Straight talking, blunt to the point, cut from the same cloth as John Corey.
Yeah, it works. And setting aside business, the most important drivers for me, and I think this is interesting. And if I leave you, if you're making notes on this or you're listening on a podcast, from my perspective, the most important thing is, who am I dealing with? Who is this person? Can I trust them? My key drivers are family and legacy. It's all about acting with integrity. So being open, honest, being clearly transparent. You know what the right moral compass is. And those things are important for me. I'm married to Charlotte. I say we've got 3 kids. My kids aren't kids anymore. They're 28, 26, and 21. So, 2 have left home. So, the house, we're rattling around with 3 of us. And when we're not doing that, it's all about fun, adventure, experiences, and pushing yourself. And a few years back, I did a bike trip in Vietnam, which was really challenging. I had a couple of falls, but I think you've got to push yourself. So I ended up with a shoulder op and 2 knee ops. And what I learned from that is basically, whatever you do, continue to push, because it's only by pushing yourself that you'll learn. And then recently bought a motorbike, which was something that was on my shopping list for a while. But moving on from that. So really quickly, the agenda. We've done the intro, guys. I just want to pick on some top challenges in your property business. Let's just look at the whole financing piece, bit of bridging, bit of development finance. I just want to reiterate the capital stack, which I know John talks about, but it's always worth going back to it and understanding where you sit, whether it's debt or equity. Some quick case studies, and then we've got time, maybe a couple of life lessons and things like that, but we've got a lot to cover in a really short period of time. So next slide, please. Wow. Okay. So key challenges. So Dave and I had this conversation. I was in the car actually going to a site meeting, I think 2 or 3 months ago. And we're just sort of shooting the breeze and talking through some things. And literally he said, just some of the points you've raised, actually, we could pick these up for one of our monthly broadcasts. So here we go. Do you know your business? And what I mean by that, this is real simple stuff. But often when I do strategy reviews for clients, it's like, what is your business? My business is a lifestyle business. I've worked in the corporate world for 20 plus years, or whatever it was. I never wanted to build a business that I could scale and sell, but that might be what you want to do. And actually, I met with someone recently who's building a brokerage, and that's exactly what he's doing. Building a brokerage because he wants to scale it and possibly sell it or merge. Mine is a lifestyle business, so it runs around what I want to do. And I think if you're clear about that, that certainly can help. But what's your strategy? How are you actually going to get to where you want to go? And then what are the pieces of work that you have to do to get to that particular point? So for example, what are the processes for running your business? If you need leads, what's the entire marketing model that you've got for generating leads? Is it through Google AdWords or Facebook or whatever it might be? But is there a process in place that's systemized and it's repeatable and you have a budget for it? Just as an example. And then if you're speaking with people, well, how do you record those conversations? Now, in my old life, if you've used CRM software, there was a product called Goldmine, which I learned to use when it was a DOS product. So not even Windows, but pre-Windows DOS. So it tells you how old I am. But I actually worked for the company. We bought Goldmine, the company, and we merged it with another part of the business. So CRM software or contact management software, absolutely key if you're speaking with potential clients, investors, so you can record those conversations. And it's simple things like that. But metrics. So what are the key metrics that you have for running your business? You know, it might just be 3 or 4 key metrics. And often if we're running a property business, so, you know, what are your cash flow forecasts to say the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months? And if you need capital, maybe say working capital, how much do you need for what projects? Where will you get that capital from? So I've just literally, before we started this session, David and John, I had a call with a client who needs some money. Actually, she needs equity. And I've sent it to you, David. So you've in your inbox, you've got an email from a client. She needs to go raise some equity. Once she does what she does, if she can get an equity raise, ideally through your platform. And that's really getting people to think about the debt and the equity piece. So there are so many things that I could pick up on in terms of knowing your business, but just the simple things about understanding working capital, things like lead generation, and what's your structure? Have you actually sat down with a not just an accountant, but maybe a tax accountant who can actually sit down and say, you know what you're in the business of holding some property, you're in business of flipping property, and also you do some JVs, and it might be appropriate, and this is not advice, that you have a holding company, and then all these separate entities that form under the holding company, but get some proper advice on it, because that could probably save you a lot of money in tax and other things like where you can save on stamp duty, for example.
Yeah, quick question.
Where I'm going for that is take advice on it. Yeah.
So quick question there. So in terms of your say the metrics, and even you talked there about the whole do you know your business? Do you like follow a template? So it comes to metrics, are you just deciding yourself what metrics, or do you like have a
no, sure.
There's always different business systems and different things out there that templated to do your metrics or templated to understand your business and your why and your vision and all that sort of stuff. How do you establish that?
I guess you could go and obtain some of those templates. I believe in keeping it really simple. Work out what are the key things that you need. Like for our business as a lender, it's cash flow forecast. We absolutely have to understand when the cash is coming in, when the cash is going out, because we can't commit to projects that we're not able to fund, for example. So I'd say, you need to sit down, because I think if you've got 150 metrics, they'll mean nothing to you. You might need 3 or 4 key metrics for running your business, work out what's important, and then you're tracking those, say, every week, for example.
It's very similar to a dashboard in a car. You need a few things on the dashboard so you can plan your trip successfully.
Yeah. Quick side note, when I worked in the city, I worked for a company where they built this amazing trading software for stockbrokers. And it was all whistles and bells. It was around the time we were moving to computer-based systems. And another company came in, and they had basically mimicked what the stock exchange had. And I think the system was called Topic, and it had bright buttons on it. And they mimicked the Topic system, and it literally was a red button, a yellow button, a green button, do this. And the other company had the sophisticated product, which did everything. Which one sold? The one that was simple. Because they thought they could go off and create something that was better than what people had. The reality was people need things that are simple. So you want a nice, simple dashboard. That's just one example under knowing your business.
It's a really good point.
The other thing is, so I talked about business structure, finding suitable projects. Most of the clients, if they pick the phone up or they access my calendar to say, look, Rory, can we just have a 10-minute chat? Where are they finding the deals? Funny enough, a lot of those projects come through Rightmove/Zoopla, but predominantly Rightmove, which always surprises me. But there are projects that they find on Rightmove. Secondly, and these are not in any particular order, but definitely networking and speaking to agents. Constantly, there's a client I'm doing a lot with right now. He ran a particular business, still makes all his money out of that business, but doesn't work in it. He just runs his property business. And that is, he knows all the agents in the area, and he can get deals done quickly. And he finds projects that just don't go to market. The other one is some clients find through auction. It's a little bit more of a challenge today with auctions because there was a time where most of those auctions were in person, but now they're pretty much all online. But I think if you're buying at auction, if it were me, I'd either buy pre-auction or post-auction. I wouldn't necessarily be buying in the room. And just like a side note, if you are buying on auction, EIG is a great source of information, essential information group run by David Sandyman. They have all the information that you need if you're looking to bid, but you have to pay a solicitor to check the legal pack. And he did a presentation I was at recently, and the number of people who buy and have never read the legal pack never ceases to amaze me or him. And then they wonder why they might get hit with some quite hefty charges. But auction is another way. I can't remember if you've done any work, guys, with the chaps from Nimbus mapping, but I've got clients who use that software to go and find projects. And again, and just going and speaking to landlords. You know, I think we're reaching a point now, and I did read an article, I think in the last week or two, there are a lot of our landlords of a certain age who've gone, you know what, I've had enough of this game, and they want out. And they think they're going to sell at top of the market. They won't be able to sell at top of the market, but there will be stock available to buy. Anyway, so that's that. Funding projects, I'll come on to on the next slide. Landlord and developer challenges. Well, I mean, where do we start with this? If we pick on, let's look at landlords. I just want to give you some key pointers, things that I'm hearing when we're speaking with clients. So you've got the potential abolition of the Section 21 no-fault evictions and the introduction of simpler tenancies. I know they've done some work in Wales. I think for some landlords, this could prove to be a challenge. I think the bigger, or one of the bigger challenges comes around MEES, so minimum energy efficiency standards. And I can see that's where we're talking about EPCs. And as I understand it, as at today, it is still not clear where the government is on their plan for properties to have an EPC rating of A to C. Everyone thinks it's 2025 for existing tenancies, sorry, for new tenancies, and 2028 for existing. That is not enshrined in law, as far as I'm aware. So they really do need to get their act together. And that comes back to the slide that you showed earlier, David, about the article in The Guardian, because those 2.6 million people living in substandard accommodation, I'd be pretty confident they absolutely do not meet the A to C rating. And I'm keen to understand how local authorities and housing associations are going to address the issue, not alone landlords, because I hope it doesn't become a landlord bashing exercise when they're still in substandard property, when everybody needs to be living in a property that's fit for purpose. The other thing for landlords, obviously, green mortgages and interest rates. I've got to be very careful what I say here, but the whole green mortgage thing comes down to ESG initiatives for large funding groups, and they've got to be seen to be green. I think what you're starting to see is the difference between a green mortgage and a non-green mortgage is the interest rate they're going to pay. I'm not convinced it actually means anything. I think there's a fair amount of greenwashing that potentially goes on here. And I think we need to be much clearer about what we're going to do with EPCs. And if you do get a green mortgage, because you've done something that clearly benefits the environment, etc. The other piece, interest rates are rising. A lot of the landlords I'm working with are on really old. If you're listening to this or watching it, you know, you probably had a Mortgage Express landlord, which you bought a property maybe 10, 12 years ago on standard. Yep, John's got his hand in the air on a really low standard variable rate. Guess what? That becomes a big shock for some investors right now. And
if it's got two hands in the air.
You know, so that's just one lender. And I think
and I think, to slightly go on a tangent, then we got to watch out for time. That's what I signed up for. I wanted a tracker, and I didn't overpay in the low rate years, and I'm paying the going rate in the higher rate years. That's the beauty of a tracker. I didn't pay all these fees to keep refinancing every 2 to 3, 5 years. But you got to be prepared for that uplift, because it does happen, like we've seen. Yep. David, how are we doing on time?
Yeah, another sort of 10 minutes or so, Rory.
Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. Developer challenge. Listen, I think the issue for developers is land cost is high. You can't change the GDV, the gross development value. I think some prices in some areas it may drop a little, but I'm not convinced it's 10% across the board. Not yet, I'm not. So I think if you're looking to buy land, I think vendors of land have got to be a little bit more open. Right now, the cost of whether it's a conversion or development, it used to start with a one, say, you know, 120 pounds, 150 pounds a square foot, if you want to use old money. These days, it's starting with a two. It's 200 pounds plus, plus. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's going to be interesting to watch. Next slide.
Okay. Good.
Please.
Okay. Just get the slide change. There we go.
So
bridging finance.
Yeah, let's keep this really simple. Listen, there's lots of different types of bridging loan. If we're looking just at a purchase bridging loan, really simple. The bridging loan is going to be based on the purchase price. So if you're buying a property, simple maths at 100K, here's the key thing you want to understand. How much money will I receive on the day of completion? The net advance. Again, trying to keep it simple. Most bridging loans, the interest is what we might call retained. So you're not servicing the debt monthly. You'll end up with roughly 60% or thereabouts of the purchase price on day one, and then you'll pay at the end. That as a rough number. So you're going to need to find the 40% and your stamp duty and associated legal costs. A market value bridge, we have got a few lenders, not many, who are open to the look at providing a bridging loan based on the actual true market value of the asset, not the purchase price. Yeah. And then a refurb bridge, we do a lot of these now, and that is where I'm buying a property for 100, so you might get maybe 60% of the purchase price and 100% of the refurb costs in stages, settled in arrears, subject to what the end value of the asset will be. And so that's a great way. So the ones we're mainly doing, so if you're into HMOs, for example, so houses with multiple occupancy, 3-bed to 5-bed or 3-bed to 6-bed conversions, plus the refurb costs. And then we can get the exit for you when you've finished. So that's a good example of a refurb bridge, and pretty much nearly every bridging loan that I'm brokering now is based around that. Can you get 100% funded? Yes, you can. Normally you need additional security. So that is case by case. But yes, it's possible. Hi, John.
Question, could people raise equity from other individuals, crowdfunding or whatever, so that the bridger is happy to have other people's equity in the mix?
Yes, and I'd say that would be subject to, depending which lender we would go to and the structure of maybe the SPV that's being set up. But I don't think that would be a problem, but we'd look at it case by case. Yeah, and we had this conversation before, David, didn't we, when we looked at for another client? But yes, I think you could do that. But if you've got additional security, so sometimes it might be possible to look at your main res and take a second charge on that for business purposes. But for those people who know me, I never, ever promise anything. I never say anything's guaranteed, because invariably all these things are case by case, but it is doable. Back in the day, we funded lots of 100% projects that we funded. Is the money cheap? Hell no. You know, I'm going to take half your profit. But if you don't have any money in the deal, and I've worked with lots of clients who've done that. What type of property? Any property that basically can act as half decent security as far as the lender's concerned. But most people use a bridging loan. It's normally, look, I need to buy quickly. It probably doesn't have a kitchen or a bathroom, or I need to win the deal. You know, I need to beat, it's as good as cash, essentially. Lenders' criteria, generally the criteria, it can change. Different lenders have different views. But essentially, they'll want a first charge on the property. You can add additional security as well, which will give you a little bit more money. Normally, you need some experience, depending on what you're doing. And we just need to understand the project. So have we got a schedule of works? Have we got a cost of works? What's it going to be worth at the end? And most importantly, the lender wants to know is, how will you repay the loan? And normally, there's two answers to that. It's either going to be it's either I'm going to sell it, or actually I'll refinance it because I'm going to keep it and hold it in my portfolio. Next question. Sorry, next slide, please, David. I'll be really quick on this, guys, because I want to get some of the case studies. Development finance. Can you get development finance? Yes. Normally, people might think of development finance as ground up development, but it could include sort of major conversion refurb. But normally, about 60 to 65% of the gross development value we can normally get funded, with 100% of the build cost, again in stages and arrears, and typically maybe 50% or thereabouts of the purchase price funded. Yes, you would normally need planning consent if it's a site that needs planning. But again, we can talk this through if someone wanted to have a conversation with me. I do have one lender who will do 100% JV finance, but you must have a track record having done this before, built mid-market houses, and they'll fund up to 10 million with none of your money in the deal, but experienced developers.
Okay, so but before we jump on to case studies, one quick question just regarding development finance and the bridging. There's obviously a lot of bar talk, anecdotal about what's happening in the market with finance. Rates going up, harder to get, lenders changing. What's your take right now as sort of a professional in this space? Is that if you're a developer coming looking for money, compared to say a year ago, how would you have that conversation?
So there are lots of, when I started in this business in 2006, there literally were a handful of lenders. Now, I think last year with something like 360 plus lenders that we know of, they have money to lend and they do want to lend. Have rates gone up? A little bit, but not massively. Certainly some of the bridging loans that we're doing, they're very competitive rates. Again, it depends on the project and it depends on who the applicant is, what's your back record, your track record, what's your backstory. But yeah, no, lenders have got money to lend and rates have gone up a little bit, but not massively.
Okay, brilliant. Okay.
Okay, keep this nice and simple. This is a cake that Mrs. OMara baked. If you come and have a one-to-one strategy review, to be fair, it's not as fancy as this one, but she did this because I said, look, I need something to illustrate the concept of the capital stack. So let's get into it. Everything that you can see in black is debt. That's money that you borrowed on a loan. The base of the cake is always the strongest, and that's the senior debt. So that might be me or a lender who comes in and goes, yep, I'll lend you some money. It could be 50, 65% loan to value. So in terms of priority, if we look on the left-hand side here, it's the strongest. Then there might be some stretch senior debt. That could be myself, maybe, for example, we lend some more money. And you can push that even further to what we call mezzanine finance, which costs you on the right-hand side more money. Why did I put this slide in? Often I speak to people who go, oh, I'm going to JV with someone. I go, great. How's it going to work? Oh, I've just given Fred 100K. Was it debt? Was it equity? They didn't know. So let's just say it was equity. Pretty much you have no rights. Yeah, it's equity. If the deal goes sour, you lose your money. If it's a loan, then you'll have loan terms and you would have used a solicitor and you would have done it correctly and you would have registered the appropriate charges to protect you. But if it's pure equity, if the deal goes sour or the debt provider calls in the loan, you may get nothing. And I think just keeping it really simple. John, I'm sure you'd like to elaborate, but I just wanted to put this in, keep it nice and simple. The strawberry on the top of that cake doesn't mean it's always the best. It can be. The person at the bottom who's the senior debt, you're the guy who gets paid first in that layer cake, so to speak.
Yeah, anyone who's looking for 100% financing, they need to look at the right column, which is you're going to be shoveling out a lot of the profit, but that's a deal you might do versus your deal you don't do, but you have to understand what you're getting into.
Yeah, okay. So we'll leave that there, David, but I just like to always cover the whole concept of the capital stack. Need to know more, please get in touch. Next slide, please, David.
I'm hungry now looking at that cake. That is not fair.
Very good cakes. Yeah.
That is just not fair at all.
Yeah, sorry. Now it's coming up to lunchtime. Right.
Okay,
so
we'll pick maybe three of these. We'll run through three if that's okay.
Okay. Let's just refresh my memory. Okay. So imagine this is an old project, but the reason it's here is for a reason. This is a client I worked with where we did lots of normal houses into 3-bed to 5-bed HMOs, probably 30, 40 projects over the years. And a lot of those I actually funded almost near at 100% funding. On this project, he said, look, I've got to up my game. And that's why this slide is in here. So bottom left, you can see the warehouse. He knew through his planning consultant and the research they'd done in this particular city that were bringing all the students into town. So he said, look, I can buy it. It was cheap as chips, about £112,000. We lent pretty much nearly all of the money with additional security on another asset. He got the planning consent for a 48-bed student HMO block. which rents to students. That's got to be generating now well over 300 plus a year in rent. You could sell that to an asset management group for 3 million plus. The key thing here is he had to go to the next level, which is exactly what he did. He brought in all the right people, did the project management, did the build. I did my bit at the start. Then we got the development funding. I got paid, built this, refinanced it. It's there. And funny enough, when you go to the next level, guess what? You stay at that level. So this particular client, he only does 200, 300, 400 blocks now. That's it.
And very interesting in terms of people's property journey and having the confidence to actually step up and go into a bigger arena.
Absolutely. Next slide, please, David, because I'll try and do 2 or 3 of these. Okay, really simple, guys. This particular client came to me, top left hand, for those of you who can see this. In a podcast, you'll have to maybe look at it later. Probate property, really simple. I'm going to buy it. I want to add it to the portfolio. He runs his own heating and engineering business, and he did everything that he said he was going to do. He went to a challenger bank who said they'd lend, and if you look on the right hand side, there's a rear lean-to extension. Oh, they wanted this survey, that survey. I said, I tell you what, I'll jump in the car. Let me go down and have a look at it. What are you going to do? And if you actually look at the pictures, he said, well, that's coming down because we're going to do a double rear story extension, which is exactly what he did. I didn't need a structural survey. We knew what was going to happen. We were happy with it. Anyway, turned the whole thing around. I don't normally talk about pulling all your money back, but actually on that particular project, he actually did pull all of his cash back. And it does about 40-odd thousand a year in rent, which it's unusual that you get all of your money back, because even if you left some cash in, it would be fine. And then move on to the next project. So yeah, nice, simple deal. It's all doable. Next slide, please, David. Okay, if you want a challenge, guys, go and buy a rundown hotel in Blackpool. You can see the spire in the background. This was a major project. Guess what? There were lots of problems with this. And so I'll never say converting property is easy, but on this project, the client bought it, converting to 9 flats. He sold 2, kept 7. There's a massive regeneration going on in this area. And for serviced accommodation, this runs well. But there's so many learnings and we don't have time. Do not think that you can refinance out of a finished asset in 4 to 6 weeks. This took months. And when I say months, I mean over 6 months with a challenger bank to refinance this. It just took forever. COVID, people working from home, blah, blah, you name it. And the poor chap's pulling his hair out because he's on a bridging loan with us. We're doing everything to work with him. It did get refinanced. So you've got to add that, just don't think you refinance something literally in a matter of weeks. It can take time, but he's retained it, generates some income, and we'll move on to the next project. So next one, thanks, David. Okay, I love this project for one reason. COVID starts, you've lost your job. So, hey, Rory, I'm going to buy a restaurant that's gone under with planning consent for a 2-bed property. So very simply, give me the numbers. He explained that he was going to do the work, bring the professionals in to do the electrics, etc. Anyway, created a wonderful 2-bed cottage. And I think the rough numbers, bought at 150, spent 50, sold at 250, made 50. So can we go to our next project? And exactly, we're just on a new build now. And that started with him doing his first major project, which wasn't a buy to let to hold. This was to basically convert and sell. So yes, it's all doable. Next one, please, David. Right, if you want a challenge, go and build something in South London, where the local authority tells you that you can take your property, which was essentially like a mini care home with 1 boiler, and you will give you consent for 5 flats. You can have a boiler in 1 flat, and every other flat has to have an air source heat pump. And watch the cost of your build skyrocket. So this was all sold under Help to Buy quite recently. Actually, I was meant to meet the developer on Monday, but we had some major train problems, so we had to reschedule. But the work that you have to do to retrofit an old property, do not underestimate it. It is significant. But he's built 5 wonderful flats, and the technology behind this does work. But if you're not doing it properly, they could be incredibly cold places. But yeah. And I think
Not for the faint-hearted, as you say.
no,
So
no, it's not.
listen, I'll give you one sentence on this one, and then we're going to have to wrap up.
Right. You often hear about, oh, I must do office to resi. So here's an office to resi conversion for the I can't remember the exact numbers on the purchase price, but the key thing is if you play the long game, and on here I think they created, I think it was 9 flats. But if you're really clever and you understand planning and playing the long game, you can't see it in the middle photo here, but in the loft, there are 3 flats all ready to go. The basic infrastructure was put in when they did the conversion. Because if you look at this property, is only 2 levels, they added another level. And then went back for more planning consent, got the more planning consent, finished off because they put all the pipe work and everything in. Bingo, 3 flats at 150 a piece back in the day. You just found another 450K in revenue. And it didn't cost 450 to build them. So again, if you understand what you're doing, this person actually is a developer and does the work himself. But just, that's interesting. And there've been so many projects we've done over the years, guys. Q&A. Some very
so I'm not sure any we're probably out of time for the Q&A. So what I'll do is I'll give your details there.
Yeah, take a screenshot of that if you want to, folks.
Yeah, and people
access my diary to book a call.
Can grab that. That's probably the thing to do. I know you like obviously getting questions and be able to talk through with clients and understanding them better. So any last minute questions, John, you had on anything that Rory covered there?
I'm good. I think he covered it well.
Yeah, certainly from my point of view, what you mentioned near the end there, Rory, about the time in that one example of 6 months in terms of refinance. I mean, we're certainly finding that as a platform, much to our frustration, is that developers coming to the end, getting near payout time, but trying to get stuff completed in terms of sales and particularly mortgages or remortgages. It just seems to be this endless kicking of the can down the road. Which is so frustrating, but that's just the nature of the market currently.
Yeah, I would say if you add that when you look at your timeline to do the build, there's always a bit of delay in the build, and then the refinance piece that used to be relatively quick. Just add some extra time for sure.
Brilliant, fantastic. Well, listen, thank you very much for that. That's absolutely excellent. There's going to be some great material there to repurpose. People want to go back on the YouTube channel and listen in there. There's a lot of really good information and some experiences that you've had, but been able to point people and give them some success tips. Absolutely brilliant stuff. Fantastic. Okay, so John, we've only got a couple of slides to wrap up on after you, but always like to hear your Corey's corner. What the man who asks a question is a fool for a minute. The man who does not ask is a fool for life. So you could ask plenty of questions in your time. So what's your
well, actually, I don't know where you get this quote, but it brings me back to high school in biology, and I was getting crushed. I did not understand most of what the teacher was teaching, and there was another John in the room, and he would ask questions, and then he would get his questions answered, and I was too shy to ask questions. So I learned very harshly that, like, okay, I feel like an idiot asking the question, but I'll be much better off when it comes to the test time if I actually know the answer.
Yeah, exactly. So any thoughts you have at the minute, anything that would be relevant to our listeners?
Well, one of the things that I think Rory's highlighted slightly is if someone like Rory's working on your loan package and putting together some of the structuring, they're almost the perfect person to explain to you why you probably need equity, why you might need to have funds that you can work with between draws. So it's almost like they could package the whole thing, even if Rory says, I'm not going to fund 100%, but I can help structure it so that the rest of the equity would make sense in the deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good takeaway. Okay. Well, we will get on then just to wrap up with what projects are currently on the platform and coming soon, etc. So the Central Point in Liverpool is on the platform. It's actually going to be promoted at the Property Investor Show. So I'm really looking forward, John, to see how it lands. We've obviously had some additional hoops and loops to jump through. It's been a really good process actually to go through that with our FCA principal in terms of, something as digital marketing is one sort of set of rules and compliance requirements. But when you're actually at a live event show-wise and things like flyers, there's actually a different level of scrutiny and requirement. So it's actually been very useful for us to go through that. but we're going to be able to talk about Central Point on the stand in a compliant way, pointing people to the platform, obviously. So if anyone's interested in this project, go and have a look on the homepage. We have 2 coming soon that are being prepared frantically behind the scenes. So our friends at PLMD are bringing another project called Blackfin over in Sidcup. It's going to be an interesting investment opportunity when that comes out in terms of how they've structured it. And then Mark FIFA is back with his first step before moving on to the planning raise with Stafford Gardens. And again, that's being prepared for the platform. So those 2 are well on the way. And I know there are, as I alluded to a minute ago, a number of raises that are actually on their initial projected date of payout. Just was saying Roy earlier, like virtually all of these are delayed because of completion of sale or refinance, particularly remortgage, etc. So for the investors, I know it can be frustrating as the time ticks by, but it is property. It's the nature of the game. And right now, that's just one of the challenges that the development world is experiencing, as Rory's alluded to. But as soon as we get a resolution and get more updates, we'll obviously stay in touch with the investors on these. So that is that. So next month, investor relations and crowdfunding is going to be the focus of next month. There'll be a couple other new team members will be on the broadcast as well. But we're really going to look at this whole area of investor relations. What should investors expect from their crowdfunding platform by way of communication? What level of detail are they entitled to as shareholders, passive shareholders, but still shareholders? And particularly then when days maybe don't go exactly as planned, what's the process for identifying? Obviously, there's SPV accounts and there's scrutiny of the fundraiser. So I want to deep dive into that a little bit and cover that. I think, John, it'll be useful because it's just, again, the reality of property.
Well, if you're on the JV side, if you're on the equity side, you're in for the ride. You're not a lender. You don't have that same security, but at the same time, you have possibly a better upside. So that, the rough and the smooth, it's all one thing. And you need to understand how to be part of that conversation, part of that dance. And so if you can bring us up to speed as to what Leo does.
I'll be looking forward to it. So you can get us on our normal social media channels. And of course, our YouTube channel. This broadcast will be on in about 15-20 minutes time. You'll be able to watch the recording. And that's is always a good place for information. Loads of other content there. So that's our contact details. You can quickly snip it and grab it. Any other points, John, before we close?
I'm good.
Okay, absolutely fantastic. Roy, thank you for today. Really beneficial and useful to hear your take on the market, as well as just how you've dealt with some of the challenges and how you've strategized your business and developed. And I love your enthusiasm. I love your passion for what you do.
Thanks, David. Thanks, John. We're always happy to come on and share. If you take one little nugget and you do something with it, actually take action, then great. You get some results. So that's brilliant.
Absolutely fantastic. So those that I'm going to see tonight over at Stratford. Look forward to seeing you at 6:30 PLMD offices. And anyone at the Property Investor Show, call and see me, stand 28. Thanks, everyone. Stay safe. Until next month, all the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you now. Bye.